Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I'm going to be going over each and every single Cavalier level difficulty boss, and I will be suggesting the best counters for them. In addition to that, I'm also going to suggest some options for the trickier fights that I have noticed people are and could be struggling with. Like there is a Vision Arcus that people complain about, there is a thing on buffed up powerful from afar, and a Nova as well. But either way, we can carry on. We can start off with the first boss, and the first boss is Sasquatch. Now, the best option for that Sasquatch that I have heard from people is quite simply Luke Cage. Now, there is Kinetic Reactor, and there's this Rage of the Beast. The Defender Sasquatch builds Rage 1 second faster, so he gets Rage stacks quite quickly. Other than that, there's nothing too special on this Sasquatch boss. But some of the easiest ways how to deal with a Sasquatch is placing an Energy Weight or Exhaustion debuff on them. And Luke Cage places up a lot of Exhaustion debuffs, and you can pretty much make sure he doesn't build up any of his Tanrak charges, or however they're called, so you maintain full damage and you don't have to deal with his like one-god OP phase. So Luke Cage is definitely a good suggestion. So is Spider-Gwen actually. And other than that, you can definitely still use Human Torch. He will do fantastically here. And who I used personally, because this is a tech quest, and when I did my runs, I obviously brought in tech kind of focused teams. And for me, on my 4-star run, 4-star Starlord did just fine up until about 30-40% mark. There I messed up at some point and I finished him off with a Warlock. The biggest thing about Sasquatch boss is that you need to be able to basically counter the regeneration towards the end, and that is extremely important. Now Luke Cage is great for that as well if you are running Despair Mastery, and via that you will effectively significantly mitigate that regeneration, plus Luke Cage also can bang like a boss here. Overall, I don't think Sasquatch was the hardest boss. I actually accidentally didn't exit the quest, but we're going to move on to the next boss, because I don't think overall there are too many problems dealing with this quest in particular. Now, the second boss, I love how those pictures don't seem to load recently well, but yeah. So, now we have Mixmaster Red Hulk, who also has Bane on and Spry. And here the idea is, again, because you do not have to deal with the global nodes that you have to deal with for the rest of the quest, you are actually quite free to bring in whatever you please to counter that weight. My personal choice here for my 4-star run was Ghost. Ghost can prevent opponent from evading with her critical hits, so I just basically stuck to mediums or medium lights. Special attacks cannot be evaded either, and she did a fantastic job. Or you can alternatively just pretty much bring in any more decent evade counter. You can bring in slow champions, because slow champions prevent Red Hulk from evading. So for instance, She-Hulk would be a great option, because Red Hulk obviously is an extra large champion. She can prevent him from evading, and if you do happen to get in tight spot and get some of those spry fatigues up or whatever, you can shrug that off as well. Night Thrasher can deal with this fight extremely easily. Corvus, if you have that mission, if you have Proxima and True Strike mission built up. But another relatively simple way how to deal with Mixmaster is just to do parry, medium, heavy every single time, and that simple rotation that is beneficial with many champions like Captain America Infinity War. I know Warlock can do fantastic. Will help you deal with this Mixmaster Hulk extremely easily. Overall, Red Hulk is not a hard fight at all. The Mixmaster is only tricky component of this fight and managing the Bane timer. But if you just keep to your parry, medium, heavy, you can quite literally use any champion you wish for this, and it's not going to be too big of a deal. Now, there are some annoying fights on the way, like this Nick Fury, which you do have to fight a couple of times, who has Rage on. Luckily, however, this is a Mystic quest, and the best way for dealing with Rage, one of the best ways of dealing with Rage, obviously is champions that nullify pretty much everything. So, in fact, Black Widow Clairvoyant can have absolutely fantastic time here if you run Mystic Dispersion, so can Doctor Doom. or any other Mystic Champion that has potent nullification abilities. So you should keep that in mind when dealing with this quest and Rage. Even though Rage damage cap will still remain, if you can bypass some of that damage cap by using champions who have damage over time effects or simply multi-hit special attacks, it will really not be that bad. It will not be that hard. Alternatively, you can obviously always bring in like a solid mutant champion with damage over time like Archangel, and Archangel can completely rinse this guy as well. And then we have Korg. And the good thing about Korg actually is that many of the more popular Mystic Champions don't really do physical hit, like Dr. Doom that never takes any damage back from Korg, neither does Black Widow Clairvoyant, neither does Symbiote Supreme, neither does Sorcerer Supreme. So Korg in this context actually isn't that problematic, and I don't think it should pose too much of an issue. And with that, we're going to move on to the next quest. I want to keep this video relatively short, so I am trying to speed along. And next is Professor X, and Professor X is actually quite tricky opponent to go up against because of the Footloose node. And the main thing of dealing with the Footloose would be bypassing that Evade and Unstoppable. So your best options are simply champions who put slow on the opponent, because if opponent is slow, they will not go unstoppable and they will also not evade. However, you always have to keep in mind that passive faltering evade that Professor X has. Therefore, quite ironically in this case, even though it has a class disadvantage, I think pretty much based on toolkit, the best answer here is Stealth Suit Spider-Man. At least one of the best answers, because as soon as you place a slow with... Oh wait, you cannot slow with class disadvantage. Never mind, disregard that, I completely forgot it. But my personal way of dealing with this node, never mind, ignore the Stealthy Man. It just occurred to me that it will not work, but slow champions overall will do great, except Stealthy, because he's skill. Cannot slow mutants. Anyway, so slow champions will do fantastic. You still have to be wary of that falter mechanic that Professor X has. The way you want to deal with falter mechanic is you want to parry, you want to try landing a hit, trigger the falter, dash out, and then kind of get ready for attacking Professor X later. Surprisingly for me, who did quite well against Professor X was Hulkbuster, even through cornered and all that other stuff. Hulkbuster worked just fine because I was like slow playing it. It does have cornered on, so be careful of that. And additional champion that I actually finished this fight off with in my 4-star run was Cosmic Ghost Rider, because Mystic champions actually also can deal with this Footloose quite well, because if you can stagger Professor X frequently, or if you can nullify his Unstoppables and evade buffs, those are active buffs, so are his prowesses when he uses special attacks, if he builds prowesses, then you can actually gain significant amount of power, so that can also be extremely beneficial to you. So my best recommendations here are definitely champions that can slow and champions that have access to nullification abilities or stagger abilities to take on this Professor X. So pretty much look at the top of your Mystic roster. Now, some people have asked me how to deal with this Apocalypse, and my best answer here was simply Captain America Infinity War can still do this fight extremely well. Captain America Infinity War overall is by far the biggest MVP in this quest in general. The tricky part about Apocalypse is because you do need to land 3 debuffs, but he does go Incinerate and Bleed immune, and some of the most popular debuff types in the game are, you guessed it, Incinerate and Bleed. So you do need to find different damage over time debuffs or different debuffs altogether to apply on this Apocalypse, and then you will not have too much to worry about. And Captain America Infinity War can place Weakness, Armor Break, and Petrify debuffs, which works absolutely fantastically. Plus, you can easily take all the block damage coming in your way from Apocalypse, so I don't want to go over too much. Don't think there were any other special requests in help how to deal with on this quest, at least on during my streams. So I'm going to move on to the next quest. Moving on to quest number 4. What was quest number 4, boss? I actually forgot. After Professor X came, let's take a quick peek. Maestro. Maestro is actually quite easy opponent to deal with, especially if you're somebody who has that Labyrinth of Legends, and presumably if you are a Cavalier level player, you have done so. Only annoying bit is noticing two-way that level 1 if you maybe are a bit rusty. Other than that, the only node on Maestro that actually gives you any trouble is Rich Get Richer. Therefore, it is extremely safe to conclude, so long as you bring in a buff-heavy champion, you will have a fantastic time against this guy. So champions like Venom, champions like Silver Surfer, or really any other champions, I don't know, even Angeline could do well. The base idea is, so long as you have more buffs than your opponent does, you gain power on top of your regular combat power rate. If Maestro has more buffs, then he starts to gain power. And Maestro obviously has feats of power, which also gives him more kind of like buffs eventually. Also, another good strategy here is nullifying all of his buffs and maintaining at least 1 or 2 buffs of your own. So, I don't know, Dr. Doom, for instance, would work here quite well as additionally to every other option that I mentioned before. Or basically any Cosmic Ghost Rider. Again, you get to Fate Seal his buffs, and you don't have to worry about anything else. And you actually just gain more power, so that is super helpful to you. And other than that, in this quest, any particular troubles? People have been asking about this Vision Arcus on Biohazard and Softguard, and my best answer there was Colossus, because Biohazard actually is superbly helpful node for Colossus, especially if you have Omega Red synergy, because then you gain attack increase extremely quickly without much worries. And obviously Colossus is Cold Snap immune. Other options that you can use for champions that are Cold Snap immune and deal with Biohazard, that would be Warlock, for instance, even though Warlock's not maybe quite the best one here. Who else can we use for this Vision Arcus? I didn't think quite past the Colossus part. Right, so we need mutants are 90% bleed immune here, so basically looking only for Cold Snap immunity. Oh, you can definitely use also Namor. Namor should be doing just fine in this quest as well. Other Cold Snap immune mutants include Havoc. Havoc should be doing just fine here, and you shouldn't have too much to worry about. Obviously, you still need to manage Vision's power, but Havoc should be working fantastically here as well. Or you can just try and run through him with Omega Red in a completely kind of like rush manner. But with that, we're going to move on to the next quest, because this video is already at 12 minutes, so I want to make sure that I don't take too long. Now, Immortal Hulk actually is very easy opponent. You can literally use pretty much anyone that has significantly high enough damage output. This is skill quest, and it kind of like fits in extremely well. I used a plethora of different champions. I used Blade, I used Aegon, I used Elsa. You can quite literally deal with this guy in whichever manner you please. If you do have maxed out Assassin, you will have a decently high chance to actually completely prevent him from healing as well. So if you have Poison Assassin, that is super helpful. Or champions that reduce opponents' ability accuracy, like Black Widow Deadly Origins could be helpful for this, or OG Black Widow, for instance. Should work quite fine here and completely bypass the immortality phase. Or you can simply heal block the guy, and you'll have no issues there as well. So you can have Warlock, you can have Mysterio, or any other heal block champion. Overall, I think this is one of the easier bosses. Just bait out at level 1. Level 2 isn't tricky to dodge either, but level 1 doesn't even have any projectiles in it. Just smack at him, make sure you can deal enough damage to kill him before his immortality is on cooldown, or you have heal block to prevent him from healing to begin with, and you will be just fine. I don't want to talk too much about this quest or anything in particular here, because it really didn't feel too hard or challenging. Now, final quest is a bit trickier, and there are a couple of iffy fights. We're gonna start off with Abomination, and against Abomination, the main condition pretty much is bleed immunity. Now, you can also use Archangel to completely blitz the guy down by reducing his ability accuracy, and he places poisons on himself, so he can be a real good Archangel food. But other than that, you just want poison immune champions, and also you do not want them really to be robots because there is a nano plague here at play. But anything else that is poison immune will work fantastic. I used Medusa in a couple of runs. It does take a while because he does have a huge physical resistance. But in order to bypass that, my personal favorite was quite simply Hyperion. He's poison immune. He has incinerates on level 1, so that's an energy damage over time. So his physical beefiness doesn't really matter. And I had an absolutely fantastic time using Hyperion. But again, his level 1 does cover quite a lot of space, but it doesn't really have any projectiles, so you can simply outrange it. Level 2 evade is tricky, so I do recommend sticking to baiting out level 1s only in this matchup. Another great thing about this matchup is that you get a weakness debuff whenever you strike his block, and you still have that petrified debuff, so you can heal quite actively via willpower, and you can use Suicide Masteries, for instance, with Hyperion perfectly fine, and you can mitigate all of the recall damage with a willpower heal. So that's actually really helpful. But as a boss, again, he wasn't too hard, he wasn't too tricky. Just keep in mind, use a poison immune, stick to baiting level 1s. Whenever you need to heal up, just strike his block a couple of times. And on top of all of that, if you have access to any damage or time effects, that's wonderful. That's all you need to know. Now, the biggest grief master here would be this buffed up Nova with Powerful from Afar, and that does indeed provide people with quite a lot of trouble. Now, the best ways how to deal with this guy, for me personally, I found most effective to be Magneto. Because Nova is a metal champion, Magneto does have access to more than 3 buffs, and 1 + 1 = 2, and Magneto absolutely destroys this guy. Another alternative options here is actually Dr. Doom can do this fight, especially if you are willing to bring in Heimdall and Angela, which isn't too big of an ask, which isn't too big of a sacrifice, because both of those champions are really good for this quest. And the way Dr. Doom does it, because he can stagger Powerful from Afar debuff, gain a power gain of his own, plus he gains Furies by himself, and if you do trigger Heimdall Angel synergy, you get even more buffs. Technically, you should be able to blitz through this fight even without Heimdall and Angel synergy, but to make it easier on yourself and quicker, you can also obviously use Heimdall and Angela, but Dr. Doom is still a fantastic option for this fight as well. It is a very tricky fight. You do need to be relatively comfortable with kind of like champion rotations here, but I think the best 2 options here really is Dr. Doom and Magneto. Magneto White should also work perfectly fine, because obviously still metal, still viable, still buffs active on him. And other than that, if you do not have aforementioned counters and you're still struggling, remember that you can pretty much use vast majority of the Mystic champions for this fight if you bring in Heimdall, Angela, and I think Magic was the precision one, and then you gain 2 buffs from Heimdall synergies, and if need be, Dexterity can be your 3rd buff, and that is how you can get around buffed up node. And then there is Thing. Thing also has been causing some issues to players. I have seen people use many different options. Night Rusher has some impressive gameplay on this guy. My personal choice here was Hyperion, and my method of playing there was I was building up my Fury stacks, triggering protection and getting these aptitude buffs. Then I saved for my level 3 and I waited for protection to fall off, and I dropped a big level 3 on Thing, and then obviously afterwards he triggers protection, and I just rinse repeat, manage the rock stacks, and Hyperion did absolutely fantastic for me. Angela can do this fight insanely well as well, in a similar kind of fashion and method, where you basically build up to your level 3, wait for protection to fall off, and then drop a big level 3 on this Thing. So I think that more or less covers the trickier bits here for most part, I think. If you have any more questions, do leave a comment. I'll try my best to answer them, but I don't want to stretch out this video any longer. So that will be me done. And remember to hit that like button, sub button, and all the other buttons. And I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya! With Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all this